The billionaire pressed play and heard his own wife calmly planning the day he would die. A billionaire was only seconds away from getting into a black SUV that would have changed his life forever. Then, a frightened 12-year-old black boy stepped out from behind a hedge and whispered 4 words, "Don't move, follow me." What sounded like a child's wild warning quickly uncovered a shocking web of betrayal, greed, secret recordings, and a deadly plan worth millions. But the biggest surprise wasn't the conspiracy. It was the boy everyone overlooked. The boy from the staff quarters. The boy whose courage would save a powerful man's life and prove that sometimes the smallest voice in the room is the one that changes everything. The morning sun spilled across the polished stone driveway of the Carter estate, turning the dew on the hedges into tiny sparks of gold. Everything looked perfect from a distance. The fountains were running. The gardeners had already trimmed the rose bushes. The black SUV waited quietly near the front gate. And billionaire William Carter was exactly 3 minutes behind schedule. That bothered him more than it should have. He stepped out of the front doors, with a leather briefcase in one hand and his phone in the other. His eyes never left the screen. Overnight reports, market updates, messages from investors in New York, a conference call in less than an hour. His entire day had already been planned down to the minute. He barely noticed the birds singing in the trees, barely noticed the breeze moving through the enormous oak branches, barely noticed anything at all. That was why he almost missed the boy. "Mr. Carter." The voice was so soft he thought he imagined it. William continued walking. Then he felt someone grab the sleeve of his jacket. Not hard, just enough to stop him. He looked down. A boy stood beside him. 12 years old, thin, dark skin, faded blue t-shirt, old sneakers that had seen better days. William recognized him after a moment. The housekeeper's son. Malik, the kid who sometimes carried groceries for elderly neighbors. The kid who was always helping someone. The kid most people in the neighborhood barely noticed, including William. "Excuse me," William said. Malik's chest rose and fell rapidly. He looked like he had been running, or crying, or both. The boy glanced toward the front gate before lowering his voice. "Don't move." William frowned. "What?" "Please," Malik whispered. "Don't move." The urgency in the boy's voice felt strangely out of place against the peaceful morning. William looked toward the waiting SUV. His driver was already standing beside the rear door. Everything seemed normal. "Malik, I'm late for a meeting, please." The boy swallowed. His hands trembled. "Follow me." William almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. A 12-year-old child was standing in the middle of a billionaire's driveway, asking him to abandon his schedule and follow him somewhere. "Is something wrong with your mother?" William asked. "No." "Are you hurt?" "No." "Then what is this about?" Malik looked over his shoulder again. The fear in his eyes sent an unexpected chill through William. The boy leaned closer. So close William could barely hear him. "If you get into that SUV," Malik whispered, "you won't come back." The world seemed to stop. Not dramatically, not like in a movie. No thunder, no sudden music. Just silence. William stared at him. The fountain continued splashing behind them. A bird landed on a nearby hedge. Somewhere across the property, a lawnmower started. Ordinary sounds. An ordinary morning. Yet something had changed. "What did you just say?" Malik's voice cracked. "I heard them." "Heard who?" "The people talking last night." William felt irritation rising. He was a man who dealt with facts, contracts, numbers, evidence, not mysterious warnings from frightened children. "Malik." The boy shook his head. No, sir. His eyes filled with desperation. Please listen. William glanced at his watch. The meeting, the investors, the contracts. His entire life had been built on discipline. You didn't become one of the wealthiest logistics executives in America by changing plans every time something unexpected happened. Yet he couldn't ignore the fear in Malik's face. The boy wasn't acting, wasn't playing, wasn't trying to get attention. He looked terrified. Tell me what you heard. Not here. Malik looked toward the gate again. Please. William followed the boy's gaze. The SUV remained parked exactly where it always parked. The driver stood exactly where he always stood. Nothing looked unusual. And yet, something about the way Malik kept watching the vehicle made William study it more carefully. The black paint reflected the morning sunlight. The license plate appeared correct. The driver wore the standard company uniform. Everything seemed normal. Everything except one strange detail. The man by the SUV wasn't looking at his phone. George always checked sports scores while waiting. Every morning, without fail. The man standing there now simply watched the house, waiting, motionless. William narrowed his eyes. Perhaps it meant nothing. Perhaps. Mr. Carter. Malik's voice pulled him back. Please come with me. The boy's fear was impossible to fake. William looked once more toward the waiting vehicle, then back at Malik, then toward the house. For the first time all morning, he forgot about the meeting, forgot about the investors, forgot about being late, because a question had suddenly appeared in his mind, a question he couldn't explain. What if the boy was telling the truth? A gust of wind moved through the trees. Malik stepped closer. If they see us talking too long, he whispered, it'll be too late. William's heartbeat slowed. Not from calm, from focus. The same focus that had helped him survive hostile takeovers and billion-dollar negotiations. The focus that appeared whenever something felt wrong. Very wrong. He slipped his phone into his pocket. Then he made a decision. All right, he said quietly. Relief flooded Malik's face. William lowered his voice. Lead the way. Without another word, the boy turned and started walking toward the side gardens, away from the gate, away from the SUV, away from the life William Carter thought he understood. And as they disappeared behind the tall hedges, neither of them noticed the driver near the gate slowly reaching into his pocket and pulling out a phone. Or the brief message he sent. One sentence. Only 3 words. He's not coming. For the first time that morning, someone else's plan had begun to fall apart. And William Carter still had no idea why a forgotten boy from the staff quarters had just saved his life. The two of them moved quickly along a narrow stone path that curved behind the mansion. Tall hedges blocked the view from the front gate. The sound of the fountain faded. So did the sight of the waiting SUV. Malik didn't stop until they reached a small service garden near the back of the property where delivery trucks sometimes unloaded supplies. Only then did he finally turn around. His chest was still rising and falling hard. William studied him carefully. Up close, the boy looked exhausted. There were dark circles under his eyes. His shirt was wrinkled. His sneakers were damp with morning dew. Most surprising of all was the fear. Real fear. Not the fear of getting caught doing something wrong. Not the fear of a child who had broken a rule. The fear of someone carrying a secret too heavy for his age. All right, William said calmly. We're alone now. Malik nodded. Tell me what this is about. The boy opened his mouth, then closed it again. For a moment he looked like he might cry. Instead, He looked down at the ground. I didn't know if you'd believe me. William crossed his arms. That depends on what you're about to tell me. The morning air carried the smell of wet grass. Somewhere beyond the staff residences, a train horn echoed through the distance. Malik took a slow breath. You know my mom works here. Yes. She cleans the East Wing. William nodded. He knew Denise Johnson by sight. A quiet woman, hard worker, always polite, always invisible. Like most of the people who kept his world running. Last night, Malik said softly, she forgot her medicine. William waited. We'd already gone home. The boy pointed toward the small cluster of employee residences beyond the gardens. So I came back. William said nothing. I wasn't supposed to be here that late. The boy swallowed. But Mom wasn't feeling good, and I knew where the medicine was. The fear returned to his eyes. And that's when I heard them. William felt a slight tightening in his chest. The people you mentioned before? Malik nodded. 2 people. Who? I couldn't see them at first. The boy glanced around instinctively, as though he expected someone to be listening. They were sitting on the back patio. William remained silent. The lights were off inside. I only heard their voices. The boy hesitated again. What were they talking about? Malik looked up, directly into William's eyes. A car. The billionaire felt his pulse slow. A car. They kept talking about a car. The breeze moved through the trees above them. William found himself paying attention to every word. Go on. They said somebody would get into it this morning. Who? Malik's answer came immediately. You. Silence settled between them. William looked away for a second, toward the distant gate, toward the SUV that was probably still waiting. His rational mind immediately searched for explanations. Misunderstanding, confusion. A child hearing fragments of conversation and imagining the rest. That made more sense than any alternative. Yet something about Malik's certainty disturbed him. What exactly did they say? I don't remember every word. The boy's voice shook. But I remember your name. William's eyes narrowed. My name. They said it 3 times. The billionaire didn't answer. The woman said your meeting was important. The man said that was why you'd never change your route. A chill moved through William. He didn't like hearing that. Not because it proved anything, because it sounded specific. Far too specific. Did you recognize either voice? Malik hesitated. For the first time since they'd started talking, he seemed unsure. Not the man. And the woman? The boy looked away. I think so. William waited. But Malik remained silent. You think so? The boy nodded. William studied him carefully. The hesitation wasn't uncertainty. It was fear. The kind of fear that comes when saying something aloud makes it real. Before William could ask another question, a door slammed somewhere behind the mansion. Both of them turned instinctively. A gardener pushed a wheelbarrow across a distant path. Nothing unusual. Yet Malik's shoulders immediately tightened. The boy looked like someone expecting danger around every corner. That realization bothered William more than he wanted to admit. He had spent years building this estate, creating security, control, predictability. And here stood a 12-year-old child acting as though the world had become unsafe overnight. Malik. The boy looked back at him. You said you heard people talking. Yes. You said they mentioned me. Yes. And that's enough to make you think someone is trying to hurt me? Malik shook his head. No. William frowned. No. The boy reached into his pocket, slowly, carefully. William watched him pull out an old phone. The screen was cracked. The protective case had faded years ago. One corner was held together with tape. This is why. William stared at it. The boy held it tightly. I recorded them. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The wind rustled the hedges. A bird landed nearby and then flew away. William looked at the phone, then at Malik, then back at the phone. You recorded the conversation? Malik nodded. The billionaire felt something shift inside him. Not belief, not yet, but curiosity. Real curiosity. The kind that appears when a situation stops looking impossible and starts looking dangerous. You have the recording? Yes. William extended his hand. Malik didn't move. The hesitation surprised him. You don't trust me? William asked. The boy looked embarrassed. It's not that. Then what? Malik stared down at the phone. His voice dropped. I just didn't know if giving it away would make everything worse. The answer hit William unexpectedly hard, because it sounded mature, too mature. The words of a child who had learned early that doing the right thing sometimes came with consequences. Why didn't you tell your mother? Malik smiled sadly. Because she'd be scared. The answer came instantly. No hesitation. No thinking. William suddenly understood something. The boy wasn't protecting himself. He was protecting her. That realization lingered in the air between them. For a moment, William found himself seeing things he had never bothered noticing before. The worn clothes, the tired eyes, the careful way Malik chose his words. This wasn't a kid looking for attention. This was a kid carrying responsibilities he shouldn't have. What if you're wrong? William asked quietly. Malik looked up. What if I misunderstood everything? The boy thought about it. Really thought about it. Then he gave an answer William would remember for a long time. Then you'll be late for a meeting. The billionaire blinked. And if you're right? Malik's voice barely rose above a whisper. Then you'll be alive. The words landed harder than they should have. William looked away. For years, people had spoken to him differently. Employees wanted approval. Investors wanted confidence. Executives wanted influence. Everyone wanted something. This boy wanted nothing. Not money, not attention, not praise. Only certainty that another human being would make it home safely. William looked at the cracked phone again, then back toward the distant gate. The SUV remained visible through a gap in the hedges. Waiting. Patient. Silent. A strange feeling settled in his stomach. Not fear, not yet. Instinct. The same instinct that had helped him build an empire from a single warehouse 25 years ago. The instinct that whispered when something didn't fit, when numbers didn't add up, when people weren't telling the truth. He slowly extended his hand again. This time, he said quietly, "Let me hear it." Malik stared at him for a moment, then finally placed the phone in William Carter's hand. The billionaire looked down at the cracked screen. A single audio file sat there, recorded at 11:42 p.m., length 8 minutes and 17 seconds. William suddenly realized his meeting no longer mattered. The investors no longer mattered. Nothing mattered except the voices waiting inside that recording. And somewhere beyond the hedges, unseen by both of them, the black SUV was finally pulling away from the gate. Whoever had been waiting there had decided not to wait any longer. William Carter stared at the cracked phone in his hand. The screen reflected the morning sunlight. 8 minutes and 17 seconds. That was all. 8 minutes that had somehow turned an ordinary Thursday morning into something he no longer understood. He looked at Malik. The boy stood quietly beside him, hands clasped together, waiting, not pushing, not talking, just waiting. William found that strange. Most adults would have been desperate to explain themselves, desperate to be believed. Malik simply stood there, like someone who had already done the hardest part. William pressed play. For a moment, all he heard was static, the distant sound of rain, wind, a door creaking somewhere. Then a voice, a man's voice, low, calm, unfamiliar. "You sure everything is ready?" William's eyes narrowed. The audio quality wasn't perfect, but it was clear enough. Another voice answered. A woman's voice. His stomach tightened instantly. He knew that voice, not because it was unusual, because he had heard it almost every day for 22 years. Claire, his wife. William didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. The recording continued. "It has to happen tomorrow morning." Claire's voice sounded relaxed, almost casual, like someone discussing travel plans. "The route is confirmed?" The man answered. "Yes." A pause. Rain tapped softly against something nearby in the recording. Then Claire spoke again. "He never changes his schedule." William felt something cold move through him. Not fear, something worse. Recognition. The recording kept playing. "He leaves at 8:30, the man chuckled softly. "Rich people are creatures of habit." Claire laughed. The sound nearly made William stop the recording, because it was familiar. It was the same laugh she used during dinner parties, the same laugh she used when friends visited, the same laugh she had used the night before. "Then tomorrow is simple." Silence followed. Several long seconds. William found himself staring at the ground. His own reflection seemed to disappear beneath the words. Then came the sentence that changed everything. "If this works," Claire said softly, "we'll finally be free." The recording ended abruptly. William stared at the screen. Neither he nor Malik spoke. A crow landed on a nearby branch. The distant sound of traffic drifted from somewhere beyond the estate walls. Life continued. The world continued. Yet William felt as though he had stepped into a completely different reality. Finally, he looked up. "How much of this did you hear?" Malik swallowed. "More than what's on the recording." William's eyes sharpened. "What do you mean?" The boy shifted his weight. "I started recording late." "Why?" "I was scared." The answer came immediately. Honest. Simple. William couldn't blame him. Most adults would have been terrified. "What happened before you started recording?" Malik looked toward the mansion. The enormous white structure stood peacefully beneath the blue sky. Impossible to imagine anything dark happening inside it. Yet now William wasn't so sure. "They talked about a road." "What road?" "I don't know." The boy shook his head. "They said there was water nearby." William felt his pulse quicken. "A lake?" "Maybe." "What else?" Malik thought carefully. His eyes narrowed in concentration. "The man said something about a curve." William remained silent. "The woman said it had to look like an accident." The words settled heavily between them. Neither moved. Neither spoke. Finally, William lowered the phone. He suddenly felt very tired. The kind of exhaustion that had nothing to do with sleep. The exhaustion that comes when something fundamental breaks inside you. 22 years. That was how long he'd been married. 22 years of birthdays, vacations, Christmas mornings, hospital visits, family photographs, anniversaries, entire decades. And now he was standing behind a hedge listening to evidence that his wife might be planning something unimaginable. His rational mind fought against it. There had to be another explanation, a misunderstanding, a joke taken out of context, anything. But every explanation sounded weaker than the last. William looked at Malik. "Did you tell anyone else?" "No." "Your mother?" "No, sir." "Why not?" The boy stared down at his shoes. For a second, he looked much younger than 12. "I didn't want her getting in trouble." William frowned. "What trouble?" Malik shrugged. "My mom works here." The answer hit harder than expected. Of course. Denise couldn't afford problems, couldn't afford accusations, couldn't afford mistakes. People with money often forgot how dangerous uncertainty was for people without it. William had spent so long living above that reality that he barely saw it anymore. But Malik lived inside it every day. One wrong accusation, one misunderstanding, one angry employer, and everything could disappear. The realization left an uncomfortable feeling in William's chest. The boy had risked all of that anyway. For him, a man who barely knew his name. "Why did you warn me?" Malik looked surprised. The question seemed obvious to him. "Because somebody should." William stared at him. The answer was so simple, so sincere. No speech, no dramatic explanation, just kindness, the kind that expected nothing in return. William looked away first, for reasons he couldn't explain. The silence stretched. Then his phone vibrated. The screen lit up. Claire. For a moment, neither of them moved. William stared at the name. His wife. The woman whose voice he'd just heard. The woman currently expecting him to be halfway to an important meeting. The woman who had no idea he was standing behind a hedge listening to a recording. The phone continued ringing. Malik looked nervous. William understood why. Everything depended on what happened next. If Claire suspected anything, the entire situation could change instantly. The billionaire took a slow breath, then answered. "Hey." His voice sounded normal, steady, controlled. Years of boardroom negotiations had taught him how to hide emotion. Claire sounded cheerful. "William? Where are you?" He glanced at Malik. The boy remained perfectly still. "I had to stop for something." "What kind of something?" "A document." A lie came surprisingly easily. Claire laughed softly. "Only you would leave for $1 million meeting and forget paperwork." William forced a smile she couldn't see. "Apparently. George says the SUV came back." William's heart skipped. Interesting. So she already knew. She was monitoring the situation. "I noticed something odd. A pause. Very brief. Very small. But it existed." "What do you mean?" The driver wasn't George. Another pause. Slightly longer this time. Then Claire laughed again. "Oh." William listened carefully. Every word mattered now. That was probably an administrative mistake. Probably. "You know how those transportation companies are?" Of course, neither mentioned the recording. Neither mentioned the warning. Neither mentioned the possibility that everything had just gone terribly wrong. Claire's voice softened. "Come home after your meeting." William closed his eyes briefly. Why? I miss you. The words should have sounded comforting. Instead, they landed like stones. I'll see what I can do. All right. Another pause. Then she said something that made the hairs rise on the back of his neck. Be careful today. The line disconnected. William lowered the phone slowly. The garden felt quieter now. Still, almost frozen. Malik was watching him. Was that her? Yes. The boy swallowed. Did she know? William stared toward the mansion. Its windows gleamed in the sunlight. Beautiful, peaceful, deceptive. I don't know. For the first time in years, William Carter admitted something he hated admitting. He didn't know what was true anymore. Not about his wife. Not about his home. Not about the life he'd built. But he knew one thing. The answers would not be found standing behind a hedge. He slipped the phone into his pocket, then looked directly at Malik. We're leaving. The boy blinked. Leaving? Yes. Where? William glanced toward the city skyline barely visible beyond the distant trees. There was only one person he trusted enough to show this recording. One person who had been beside him through lawsuits, mergers, investigations, and crises. His attorney, Robert Hayes. William picked up his briefcase. There's someone I need to talk to. Malik looked uncertain. Should I come? William looked at the boy for a long moment, then nodded. You're the reason I'm still standing here. The billionaire's voice was calm. Certain. And right now, you're the most important witness I have. Together, they started walking toward the service road behind the estate. Neither noticed the second pair of eyes watching from an upstairs window of the mansion. A curtain moved slightly, then became still again. Someone inside had seen them leave, and for the first time since the plan began, another person was starting to realize something had gone terribly wrong. William Carter drove himself. It was the first unusual thing he had done all day. He had left his estate through a service exit used mostly by maintenance crews and delivery trucks. The route wound behind a row of old warehouses before connecting to the main road into Atlanta. Malik sat quietly in the passenger seat. The boy stared out the window as the city slowly came alive around them. Morning traffic thickened. School buses rolled through intersections. Construction crews unloaded equipment from pickup trucks. People carried coffee cups and rushed toward office buildings. Everything looked normal. That was the strangest part. The world looked exactly the same as it had 2 hours earlier. Yet William's life no longer felt recognizable. He glanced toward Malik. The boy had barely spoken during the drive. His hands rested in his lap. The old cracked phone was tucked safely inside his pocket. You hungry? William asked. Malik looked surprised. A little. William nodded. 10 minutes later, they pulled into a small diner near a bus station on the south side of downtown. The place sat beneath a faded green awning. The windows were fogged from fresh coffee and breakfast grills. Inside, the air smelled like bacon, toast, and decades of stories. It was not the kind of place most people expected a billionaire to visit. That was precisely why William liked it. No reporters, no investors, no executives. Just ordinary people trying to get through their day. They sat in a corner booth near the back. A waitress named Carol brought coffee for William and orange juice for Malik. When she asked what they wanted to eat, Malik immediately looked toward William before answering. The gesture was small, but William noticed it. The boy had learned to ask permission before taking up space. That realization bothered him. Get whatever you want, William said. Malik hesitated, then ordered pancakes. Nothing else. William ordered breakfast for both of them. When the waitress left, he pulled out his phone and dialed a number from memory. The line rang twice. "Robert." "William?" came the voice on the other end. Robert Hayes had been William's attorney for nearly 18 years. They had survived lawsuits, acquisitions, government investigations, and one very unpleasant shareholder revolt together. Robert was one of the few people William trusted completely. "I need to see you." There was a pause. Robert immediately heard something unusual in William's voice. "When?" "Now." "What's happened?" William looked at Malik. The boy lowered his eyes. "A lot." Another pause. Then Robert spoke quietly. "Where are you?" 20 minutes later, Robert Hayes walked into the diner. He was in his early 60s, lean, silver-haired, and carried himself with the calm confidence of someone who solved problems for a living. His eyes immediately landed on Malik, then on William, then back to Malik. "Interesting. Very interesting." Robert slid into the booth. "Good morning." "It isn't." That answer alone told Robert how serious this was. William rarely sounded shaken. Today he sounded exhausted. Without wasting time, William handed him the phone. "Listen." Robert plugged in earbuds. The diner noise faded around him. For nearly a minute he listened without expression. Then his face changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. When the recording ended, he removed the earbuds slowly. Where did this come from? William nodded toward Malik. The attorney looked at the boy. For a long moment neither spoke. Then Robert asked a simple question. "You recorded this?" Malik nodded. "Yes, sir." Robert studied him carefully. The attorney had interviewed witnesses, executives, politicians, and criminals throughout his career. He knew when someone was lying. The boy wasn't. Not even close. "What else do you remember hearing?" Malik repeated everything. The rain, the voices, the mention of a road near water, the discussion about schedules, the phrase that kept echoing inside William's head. "We'll finally be free." When Malik finished, silence settled over the table. The waitress arrived with breakfast. No one touched it. Finally, Robert leaned back. "We need facts." William nodded. "Agreed. The recording raises questions." "It does, but it isn't enough." William already knew that. A recording without context could mean many things. Misunderstandings happened. Conversations could be interpreted incorrectly. Yet something felt wrong. Deeply wrong. Robert folded his hands. "Start from the beginning." William explained everything. The warning, the SUV, the replacement driver, the phone call from Claire, the strange pauses, the hidden route. Robert listened carefully. When William finished, the attorney stared toward the window. Cars moved through the intersection outside. Pedestrians crossed the street. Normal life. Then Robert suddenly asked, "Who was driving the SUV?" William frowned. "What do you mean? Was it George?" "No." "You confirm that?" "Not yet." Robert's expression sharpened. "Call him. Immediately." William took out his phone. George answered on the second ring. "Mr. Carter?" Relief flooded the man's voice. "Sir, I've been trying to reach somebody all morning." William exchanged a glance with Robert. "Where are you, home?" "Why?" A pause. "Because dispatch told me I was off today." William sat up straighter. "What?" "They sent a message yesterday evening." George sounded confused. "Said a replacement driver was covering your schedule this morning." Robert slowly reached for a pen. His eyes never left William. When did you get the message? About 7 o'clock. Who sent it? The office. William's stomach tightened. No. Not the office. Someone pretending to be the office. When the call ended, nobody spoke for several seconds. The evidence was beginning to form a pattern. And patterns frightened William more than isolated events, because patterns meant planning. Someone had arranged the replacement. Someone knew the schedule. Someone knew George. Someone had access. Robert finally broke the silence. That's not an accident. William nodded. No. It means whoever planned this knew your routine. The attorney turned toward Malik. And if this boy hadn't spoken up. Nobody finished the sentence. They didn't need to. The diner suddenly felt much smaller. Outside, clouds drifted across the Atlanta sky. The sunlight dimmed slightly. Robert opened his laptop. I want to check something. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. Insurance records, corporate filings, recent legal amendments. He searched quietly for nearly 10 minutes. Then he stopped. His eyes narrowed. What is it? William asked. Robert slowly turned the screen around. A document appeared. An insurance policy. William recognized it immediately. What about it? Robert pointed to a section near the bottom. This amendment. William leaned closer. His heartbeat slowed. Not from calm, from concentration. The amendment had been added 11 months earlier. Coverage increased significantly. Beneficiary listed as Claire Carter, sole beneficiary, no secondary beneficiaries, no trust distribution protections, no corporate review clause, nothing, just Claire. William stared at the document. I don't remember signing this. Robert nodded. I was wondering if you'd say that. William looked up. What does that mean? The attorney pointed toward the date. The room suddenly felt colder. The amendment had supposedly been signed on a Thursday, 11 months ago. William's face slowly drained of color. That's impossible. Robert didn't answer, because he already knew. William remembered exactly where he had been that day. Not in Atlanta, not in Georgia, not even in the country. He had been speaking at a transportation conference in Chicago, surrounded by hundreds of people, giving interviews, appearing on stage. The entire trip had been documented publicly. There was no possible way he had signed those papers. Yet there was his signature. Clear as day. At the bottom of the page. Robert closed the laptop slowly. Neither man spoke. Across the booth, Malik looked from one adult to the other. He didn't fully understand the document, but he understood something important. The fear he had carried all morning was no longer his alone. Now William Carter was carrying it too. Robert finally leaned forward. His voice was lower than before. More serious, William. Yes. I think we have a much bigger problem than a suspicious driver. The billionaire looked at him. Robert's eyes were steady, cold, professional. The eyes of a lawyer who had just connected several pieces of a puzzle. Because if somebody altered your insurance policy, he paused, then delivered the sentence neither William nor Malik wanted to hear. That means this plan didn't start last night. It started a long time ago. And somewhere across Atlanta, Claire Carter was probably beginning to realize that her husband was no longer where he was supposed to be. Rain clouds drifted across the city skyline, turning the morning light gray beyond the diner windows. Inside, the yellow lamps hanging above the booths cast a warm glow over chipped tables and old photographs on the walls. The place felt untouched by time, People came here because breakfast was cheap and the coffee never stopped flowing. Nobody looked twice at the billionaire sitting in the corner. Nobody noticed the frightened boy beside him. Nobody knew that an entire life was unraveling over cold eggs and untouched pancakes. William stared at the insurance amendment on Robert's laptop. 11 months. That number kept repeating in his head. 11 months ago, someone had begun preparing for a future that was supposed to end with his death. He leaned back slowly. I want everything. Robert looked up. Everything. Every change to my insurance. Every financial transfer. Every document Claire touched. His voice remained calm. Almost too calm. The calmness frightened Robert more than anger would have, because William Carter only became this quiet when something inside him had broken. I'll get it, Robert said. William nodded. Then his eyes drifted toward Malik. The boy sat silently, his orange juice untouched. He looked out the window at a city bus pulling away from the curb. For a moment, he seemed far away, lost in thought. William realized something. The child hadn't slept. Not really. His eyes carried the heavy look of someone who had spent an entire night deciding whether to do the right thing, and wondering if doing the right thing would destroy his life. The realization settled heavily in William's chest. Malik. The boy turned. Yes, sir. How long were you awake last night? Malik hesitated. Most of it. Robert stopped typing. William frowned. You didn't go to sleep? The boy shook his head. I kept thinking about it. The conversation? Yes. William waited. I wasn't sure what to do. The words came quietly. I thought maybe I heard it wrong. I thought maybe I should forget it. The boy looked down, but every time I tried to sleep, I kept seeing that SUV. Silence settled over the booth. I kept thinking about you getting inside. The diner noise seemed to fade. William looked at him carefully. No child should have carried something like that alone. Yet Malik had, because he believed somebody's life might depend on it. The billionaire suddenly remembered something. Not a business deal, not a board meeting, a memory, a long time ago. Before the money, before the company, before the private jets and luxury homes. Back when he was 22 years old and sleeping in the back room of a warehouse he couldn't really afford. He remembered being invisible. He remembered what it felt like when nobody listened. Nobody believed. Nobody cared. Success had buried that memory beneath decades of wealth. Now a 12-year-old boy was digging it back up. Robert's phone buzzed. The attorney glanced at the screen. His expression changed immediately. What is it? William asked. I got a hit. Robert opened an email. Several files appeared. Names, dates, documents. He scanned them quickly, then stopped. The color drained from his face. William noticed instantly. What? Robert looked up. Daniel Pierce. The name felt strangely familiar. William had seen it somewhere, probably on the insurance document. Who is he? Robert turned the laptop around. A photograph filled the screen. A handsome man, mid-40s, dark hair, confident smile, expensive suit, the kind of face people trusted immediately. The kind of face designed to make strangers lower their guard. William stared. I've never seen him. Robert nodded slowly. I believe Claire has. The air inside the diner seemed to tighten. Robert opened another file. Then another. Then another. A pattern emerged. A disturbing one. 5 years ago. Daniel Pierce appeared in the life of a wealthy widow in South Carolina. The relationship lasted less than a year. She died unexpectedly from what authorities ruled an accident. 3 years later, another relationship, another wealthy partner, another tragedy. Nothing criminal, nothing proven, nothing that led to charges. Yet the names kept appearing. The same man, different cities, different women, different stories. Always money, always inheritance, always coincidence. William felt a cold weight settle inside him. You're saying he's a professional? Robert closed the laptop. I'm saying this man has spent years living off wealthy people. The attorney paused. And wherever he goes, strange things seem to happen. Nobody spoke. Outside, rain finally began falling, small drops sliding down the diner windows. Malik looked toward the glass. He didn't fully understand legal records, but he understood danger, and the danger was growing. Robert's phone buzzed again. This time he answered immediately. He listened, said almost nothing, then ended the call. What now? William asked. Robert took a slow breath. The SUV. William sat forward. What about it? We found the driver. The billionaire's eyes narrowed. And? It wasn't a transportation company employee. Silence. He was hired privately. William's jaw tightened. When? 3 days ago. Another piece of the puzzle slid into place. 3 days. The insurance policy. The fake message to George. The recording. The route. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't emotional. This was planned. Carefully. Patiently. For a very long time. And somebody had invested significant effort into making sure William Carter would never arrive at his meeting. Malik stared at the table. A strange feeling was growing inside him. Until now, everything had felt distant, like something happening to rich people, people who lived behind gates and fountains, people whose problems belonged in newspapers. But now he realized something terrifying. He was part of it. The moment he had spoken up, he had stepped into the middle of someone else's secret. Someone dangerous. Someone willing to plan for months. Someone who might eventually start asking questions. Robert seemed to reach the same conclusion. His eyes shifted toward Malik, then toward William, then back again. We need to talk about the boy. The statement hung in the air. William immediately understood. So do I. Robert lowered his voice. If the plan failed this morning, they'll want to know why. Yes, and eventually they'll retrace every step. The rain tapped softly against the windows. A police siren wailed somewhere in the distance, then faded. Robert folded his hands. Right now they think something went wrong. William nodded. But eventually they'll realize somebody warned you. The billionaire looked toward Malik. The boy was trying to appear brave, trying to appear older than 12. Yet William could see the fear behind his eyes. And suddenly, a thought struck him harder than anything else that morning. Malik had saved his life. But nobody had saved Malik's. Not yet. The realization hit with uncomfortable force. Because if events continued moving forward, the boy could become the weakest point in a very dangerous situation. William looked out the rain-covered window. The city moved beyond the glass. People hurried beneath umbrellas. Buses splashed through puddles. Life continued, unaware. Then he turned back toward Malik. What do you usually do after school? The question surprised everyone. Malik blinked. What? After school. The boy shrugged. Sometimes I help at the community kitchen. William remembered Denise. Working nights, working days, trying to hold everything together. Every week, Malik nodded. We serve soup on Fridays. The answer was so ordinary, so innocent. William felt something twist inside him. A child who spent his afternoons helping strangers. A child who had risked everything to save a man who barely knew his name. And now that same child might be in danger because he had chosen kindness. The unfairness of it angered him more than the betrayal, more than Claire, more than the insurance documents, more than Daniel Pierce. Robert watched William carefully. He knew that look. The look appeared whenever William made a decision, a real decision, the kind that changed outcomes. Finally, William spoke. His voice was quiet, but firm. No matter where this goes. Robert waited. William looked directly at Malik. You won't face it alone. The boy seemed unsure what to say. Nobody had ever promised him something like that before. Not a teacher, not a businessman, not someone like William Carter. Outside, the rain continued falling. Inside the diner, 3 people sat beneath yellow lights, while the truth slowly emerged from the shadows. And somewhere across Atlanta, Claire Carter was beginning to realize that her husband wasn't returning her calls anymore. For the first time in nearly a year, the future she thought she had built was beginning to crack. She just didn't know how badly. The rain continued to fall over Atlanta. By early afternoon, the streets shimmered beneath gray skies and flashing traffic lights. Water rolled along curbs and gathered in shallow puddles beside bus stops. Inside the diner, however, time seemed frozen. William Carter sat silently, staring at the window. The coffee in front of him had gone cold. Across from him, Robert Hayes was making phone calls, one after another. Quiet, precise, efficient, the way he always did when a problem was bigger than it first appeared. Malik remained in the booth, watching people hurry through the rain outside. For a while, nobody spoke. Then Robert finally ended a call and closed his phone. His expression told William everything. The situation had become worse. Much worse. What did you find? William asked. Robert leaned back slowly. I found the notary. William looked up. The one connected to the insurance amendment? Yes. And? The attorney took a breath. He's retired. That's not unusual, no. Robert paused. But what is unusual is what he remembers. The noise of dishes clattering somewhere in the diner seemed distant now. William felt himself focusing completely. What does he remember? Robert folded his hands. He remembers Claire. The answer landed heavily. William didn't react outwardly. Years of business negotiations had trained him well, but inside something tightened. When? 11 months ago. The exact same period. The exact same timeline. Robert continued. The notary says Claire visited the office personally. William stared at him. Personally? Yes. And according to him, she arrived with a man. A long silence followed. William already knew what name was coming next, even before Robert spoke it. Daniel Pierce. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere over the city, soft, distant. William looked down at the table. The pieces were connecting faster now. Too fast. The recording, the driver, the insurance documents, the notary. Daniel, Claire. A plan stretching back nearly a year, maybe longer. The realization left him feeling strangely empty. Not angry, not yet. Just hollow. Across the booth, Malik watched the 2 men carefully. He understood less than half of what they were discussing, but he understood enough. The danger was real, and the adults finally knew it too. Robert opened his laptop again. This isn't all. William looked up. No? No. The attorney clicked another file. A photograph appeared, then another, then another. Different locations, different years. The same man. Daniel Pierce, standing beside different women, different homes, different cities. Always smiling, always charming, always looking like he belonged. Robert pointed toward the screen. South Carolina. Click. Arizona. Click. Tennessee. Click. Florida. Each image showed Daniel living a different life, a different story, a different identity. William felt his stomach tighten. How many? Robert shook his head. I don't know yet. The answer was honest, and somehow that made it worse. What I do know is this. The attorney turned the laptop toward him. This man doesn't stay anywhere very long. William stared at the photographs. Daniel looked harmless, successful, trustworthy. The kind of man neighbors would wave to. The kind of man invited to dinner parties. The kind of man nobody questioned, which made him dangerous. Very dangerous. Because predators rarely looked like predators. Robert's phone rang again. This time he answered immediately. Talk to me. William watched his face carefully. Halfway through the conversation, Robert sat up straighter. His eyes sharpened. When the call ended, he slowly lowered the phone. What now? William asked. The attorney didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked directly at Malik, then at William, then back at Malik. The pause felt endless. Finally, he spoke. Someone has been asking questions. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. What kind of questions? William asked. Questions about a boy. Malik froze. William felt immediate concern. A boy? Robert nodded. Near the employee residences. Nobody spoke. One of my investigators called me 10 minutes ago. The attorney's voice remained calm. But somebody was seen talking to neighbors near Denise's apartment building. Malik looked confused. My mom's apartment? Yes. The boy's face lost color. William felt something dark settle inside him. The fear he'd been trying to ignore suddenly became impossible to dismiss. The plan had failed, and now someone was looking for answers. Someone was following the trail backward, toward Malik, toward Denise, toward the one witness nobody had expected. The billionaire looked directly at Robert. What do we do? The attorney didn't hesitate. We protect them. Them. Not him. Them. William noticed the word, and for the first time all day, something shifted inside him. For years, people had protected William, his company, his money, his reputation. Now the person who needed protection was a 12-year-old boy from a poor neighborhood, a boy who had risked everything because it was the right thing to do. William looked toward Malik. The child seemed smaller now, not physically, emotionally. The weight of everything was beginning to reach him. The reality that dangerous adults might be looking for him. The reality that his mother could become involved. The reality that life might never return to normal. And still, he hadn't once asked for a reward. Not once. That fact stayed with William. Then a memory surfaced unexpectedly. A different time. A different life. He remembered being 12 himself, growing up in a small town where his father worked double shifts, remembering nights when the electricity nearly got shut off, remembering how frightening uncertainty felt. The difference was simple. Nobody had protected him. Nobody had stepped in. Nobody powerful had noticed. He looked at Malik again and quietly made a decision, one that surprised even him. "Where does your mother work tonight?" he asked. Malik blinked. "The community kitchen. The one near Grant Street?" The boy nodded. William looked at Robert. "We need to see her." Robert agreed immediately. "Before someone else does." Outside, the rain had begun falling harder. Cars moved slowly through the streets. Headlights reflected off wet pavement. The city seemed darker now, more uncertain. The three of them finally stood. The waitress brought the bill. William paid without looking. As they walked toward the exit, Malik stopped beside the window. For a moment he watched people running through the rain. An elderly man helping his wife cross the street. A teenager sharing an umbrella with a younger child. Ordinary acts of kindness. Small things. The kind of things he noticed. The kind of things most people ignored. William stopped beside him. "What is it?" Malik looked out at the storm, then gave a small shrug. "I just hope my mom's okay." The simplicity of the answer struck William harder than any evidence they'd uncovered. The boy wasn't worried about himself. He was worried about Denise. As always. Someone else came first. William nodded slowly. "We'll make sure she is." The three of them stepped outside. Cold rain greeted them immediately. Traffic hissed across wet roads. The city moved around them in a blur of headlights and gray skies. And somewhere else in Atlanta, Claire Carter sat in a beautiful house filled with expensive furniture and carefully planned lies. Her phone rested on the kitchen counter. 3 unanswered calls to William. No response. No explanation. No sign that her husband was where he should be. For the first time since morning, fear was beginning to creep into her thoughts. Because plans depended on certainty, and certainty was disappearing. Meanwhile, across town, a black sedan sat parked near a modest apartment building. Inside, a man watched the entrance through rain-streaked glass, waiting, observing, looking for answers. And he had no idea that William Carter was already moving faster than anyone expected, including him. The rain followed them across the city. William drove this time. Robert sat in the front passenger seat, answering messages and taking occasional calls. Malik sat in the back, staring out the window as Atlanta blurred into streaks of gray, red brake lights and reflections on wet pavement. For most of the drive, nobody spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was heavy, the kind of silence that settles over people when they know something important has changed and there is no way to go back. The community kitchen stood on Grant Street, in an aging brick building squeezed between a laundromat and a discount grocery store. The sign above the door had faded years ago. A small line of people waited beneath umbrellas outside. Some were elderly, some were families, some were simply trying to get through another difficult week. The smell of soup and fresh bread drifted into the rain. Malik immediately recognized the place. "This is where Mom works." William parked across the street. For a moment, he simply watched. People moved in and out carrying trays. Volunteers unloaded boxes from a van. An older woman swept water away from the entrance. Nothing looked unusual. Yet Robert was studying the area carefully. "What is it?" William asked. The attorney nodded toward the far corner of the block. A dark gray sedan sat beneath a dead oak tree. Its engine wasn't running. Its lights were off. But someone was inside, watching. William felt his jaw tighten. The same car? Maybe. Robert didn't sound certain. but it's the kind of coincidence I don't like. Neither did William. Across town, there were thousands of parked cars, yet somehow one was sitting directly across from the place where Denise Johnson worked, a place few people would have reason to watch. Malik followed their gaze. His face paled. "Do you think they're looking for me?" Nobody answered immediately, because the truth was uncomfortable. Yes, they probably were. Not because Malik mattered to them personally, because he represented something dangerous, a loose end, a witness, the one thing nobody had planned for. William looked at the boy through the rearview mirror. The fear was becoming visible now. Not panic, not hysteria. Just the quiet realization that adults with bad intentions might know his name, and that realization should never belong to a 12-year-old child. "We're going inside," William said. Robert nodded. Agreed. They crossed the street together. Rain tapped softly against umbrellas. The line outside shuffled forward. Nobody paid much attention to William. His expensive coat and polished shoes looked strangely out of place among the working-class neighborhood. But most people were too busy dealing with their own lives to care. Inside, warmth greeted them immediately. The kitchen smelled of vegetables, broth, and fresh rolls. Volunteers moved between tables. Conversations filled the room. Laughter appeared here and there. Despite the hardship many people carried, there was life in the building. Real life. The kind money couldn't buy. "Malik!" The voice came from across the room. Denise Johnson hurried toward them. Relief flooded her face the moment she saw her son. Then confusion replaced it. Because standing beside him was William Carter, and beside William stood one of Atlanta's most respected attorneys. The combination made no sense, not in her world, not in any world. "Malik, where have you been?" She immediately knelt beside him. "Were you at school?" The boy looked guilty. "No, Mom." Denise closed her eyes briefly. Of course. Something had happened. She stood slowly. Her attention shifted toward William. "Mr. Carter?" William could see exhaustion in her face. Years of double shifts. Years of worrying about bills. Years of carrying more responsibility than one person should. Yet there was kindness, too. The same kindness Malik carried. Now he understood where it came from. "Denise," William said quietly, "we need to talk." Her expression changed instantly. Fear. People in Denise's position rarely heard those words without expecting trouble. Had she done something wrong? Was she being fired? Had Malik gotten into trouble? William recognized the look immediately and hated it. "You're not in trouble," he said. The relief was small, but visible. "Can we sit somewhere private?" Denise nodded slowly. A few minutes later, they gathered in a storage room behind the kitchen. Stacks of canned food lined metal shelves. The hum of an old refrigerator echoed softly in the corner. Outside, rain tapped against the back door. William explained everything. Not every detail. Not Daniel's entire history. Not the insurance documents. Just enough. Enough for Denise to understand why Malik had disappeared that morning. Enough for her to understand why William had spent the day with him. Enough for her to realize the danger was real. When he finished speaking, the room became silent. Denise stared at her son. Her eyes filled with tears, not because she was angry, because she finally understood what he had been carrying alone. "Oh, baby." She wrapped her arms around him. Malik hugged her tightly. For a moment, neither moved. William looked away. Some moments felt too personal to watch. Denise eventually pulled back. Her hands rested on Malik's shoulders. "You should have told me. I didn't want you scared." The answer broke her heart. William could see it. Because parents recognized sacrifices their children should never have to make. Denise wiped her eyes, then looked at William. What happens now? Robert answered first. We stay ahead of them. Them? The people involved. The room grew quiet again. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere over the city. Denise slowly nodded. She understood enough. More importantly, she trusted her instincts, and her instincts told her this situation was dangerous. A knock interrupted them. Everyone froze. The sound came again. 3 short knocks, 1 long. Robert immediately moved toward the door, carefully. When he opened it, an elderly volunteer stood outside. Sorry to interrupt. The woman looked nervous. Denise? What is it? The volunteer glanced toward the front windows. There's a man asking questions. The room instantly became still. What kind of questions? Robert asked. The volunteer swallowed. Questions about Malik. Nobody spoke. The rain seemed louder suddenly. The volunteer continued. He said he was doing neighborhood outreach, but something felt off. Denise's face lost color. Malik stepped closer to his mother. William felt a cold wave move through him. It was happening faster than expected. Much faster. Robert took out his phone immediately. Where is he now, outside? The attorney exchanged a look with William. No words were needed. The message was clear. The search had begun. Someone was already following the trail, and they had reached Malik. William walked to the small window near the back of the storage room. Through the rain-streaked glass, he could see the front sidewalk. People entering, people leaving, and standing near the corner, a man in a dark jacket. Waiting, watching, patient. William didn't recognize him, but that didn't matter. The timing alone was enough. He stepped away from the window, then made a decision. One that surprised even Robert. One that surprised himself. Denise. She looked up. Yes? You and Malik aren't staying here tonight. The room fell silent. What? You're coming with me. Denise stared at him, certain she had misheard. William's voice remained calm. Certain. The people responsible don't know exactly what we know. They don't know how much Malik heard. But they're looking. He glanced toward the window. And until this is over, I'm not taking chances. Denise looked overwhelmed. The idea of leaving, the idea of accepting help, the idea of entering William Carter's world. It all felt impossible. But when she looked at Malik, the decision became easier. Because fear had finally reached him too. Not fear for himself, fear for her. William noticed. And once again he found himself struck by the same thought. The boy had spent the entire day protecting everyone except himself. Denise slowly nodded. Okay. Robert immediately began making arrangements. Phone calls, security, temporary housing, people he trusted. The machine was moving now, fast. Outside, the man in the dark jacket eventually walked away, but not before glancing once toward the community kitchen, as if memorizing it, as if reporting back later. And somewhere across Atlanta, Daniel Pierce received a phone call. He listened quietly, asked only 2 questions, then ended the call. For the first time all day, his smile disappeared, because someone had finally found the thread. And that thread had a name. Malik Johnson. The rain finally eased sometime after sunset. Atlanta glowed beneath wet streets and reflected neon lights. Traffic moved through puddles. Storefront signs shimmered across the pavement like broken ribbons of color. Inside William Carter's black sedan, nobody spoke much. Denise sat beside her son in the back seat. Malik leaned against the window. The events of the day had finally begun catching up to him. His eyelids felt heavy. His shoulders ached. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw the SUV waiting at the gate. He saw the driver. He heard Claire's voice from the recording, and he wondered if everything would ever feel normal again. William noticed. The boy had spent the entire day carrying himself like someone older. Now, for the first time, he looked 12. Just 12. A child who should have been worried about homework, basketball games, and summer vacation. Not conspiracies, not insurance documents, not people looking for him. The realization sat heavily inside William. Robert was following behind them in another vehicle. His investigators had already arranged temporary security, safe locations, additional surveillance, precautions. All the things wealthy people could buy when danger appeared. Yet William kept thinking about one uncomfortable truth. Malik had never had access to any of that. Until today. The car eventually turned away from downtown, away from the skyscrapers, away from the wealthy neighborhoods. Denise looked surprised. "Where are we going?" William glanced at her through the mirror. Home. The answer confused her. She assumed he meant his mansion. He didn't. 20 minutes later, they entered a neighborhood William had never visited before. Small apartment buildings lined the streets. Many were old. Some needed repairs. Streetlights flickered above cracked sidewalks. A train horn echoed somewhere in the distance. The smell of fried food drifted from a corner restaurant still serving late customers. Malik sat up immediately. "This is our neighborhood." William nodded. "I know." Denise looked equally surprised. The Billionaire pulled alongside a narrow apartment building. Paint peeled from portions of the exterior. Several windows had been patched over the years. A bicycle rested against a railing held together by rust and determination. William stared at the building quietly. This was where Malik lived. This was where Denise came home after cleaning houses and working evening shifts. This was the place the boy returned to after spending his afternoons helping strangers. For reasons he couldn't explain, William felt embarrassed. Not because of the apartment, because he had never wondered. Not once. Denise worked on his property nearly every day, yet he had never asked where she lived, never wondered how she got home, never thought about what happened after she disappeared through the staff gate each evening. People like Denise simply blended into the background of his life. Today, that realization felt ugly. "We need some clothes," Denise said quietly. "Medicine, too." William nodded. "Take your time." They climbed the stairs together. The hallway smelled faintly of old carpet and detergent. The lights buzzed softly overhead. Apartment 3B sat near the end. Denise unlocked the door. When it opened, William stood still. Not because the apartment was terrible, because it wasn't. It was clean, carefully maintained, loved. The furniture was old but polished. The curtains had been repaired by hand. A small dining table sat beneath a lamp with a cracked shade. Family photographs covered one wall. Everything inside reflected effort. The effort of people doing their best with limited resources. Malik moved immediately toward a shelf near the sofa. He grabbed an inhaler, then a backpack, then a worn notebook. The movements were automatic, practiced, like someone used to being prepared. Denise disappeared into the bedroom. William remained standing near the doorway. For the first time in years, he felt completely out of place. Not because of money, because of perspective. His mansion contained rooms larger than this entire apartment. He owned cars he rarely drove, homes he rarely visited, closets filled with suits, storage rooms filled with things he barely remembered buying. Meanwhile, Denise had spent years stretching every dollar, making every sacrifice count. And somehow, despite all of that, Malik had grown into the kindest person William had met in a very long time. His gaze landed on the dining table. Several envelopes sat there. Bills, past due notices, payment reminders. Denise returned before he could look away. Embarrassment flashed across her face. She quickly gathered the envelopes. "I'm sorry." William frowned. "For what?" She hesitated, then laughed softly. A tired laugh. "The place isn't much." The words hit him harder than she intended, because they weren't true. The apartment wasn't luxurious, but it was filled with something his mansion had been missing for a long time. Warmth, family, purpose. William slowly shook his head. "It looks like a home." Denise stared at him. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Nobody wealthy had ever described her apartment that way. Nobody. The silence lingered. Then Malik suddenly spoke. "Can I show you something?" William looked over. The boy held up a notebook, the same notebook he'd grabbed from the shelf. "What is it?" Malik smiled nervously. "I draw stuff." William nodded. "Okay." The boy opened the notebook. Page after page appeared. Sketches, ideas, machines, simple inventions, community gardens, rain collection systems, wheelchair ramps, portable water filters. William blinked, then looked closer. The drawings weren't childish doodles. They were thoughtful, detailed, creative. Each page contained notes, measurements, questions, possible solutions. Some were rough, others surprisingly sophisticated. The billionaire turned another page, then another. His expression slowly changed. "When did you start doing this?" Malik shrugged. "A while ago. How long?" "Since I was little." William looked up. "Who taught you?" The boy smiled. "Nobody." The answer surprised him. "You taught yourself?" Malik nodded. "I watch videos at the library." The room became quiet. William turned another page. A small filtration device. Simple. Portable too. Designed to provide clean drinking water using inexpensive materials. "What is this?" Malik brightened immediately. "It's for the kitchen." "The community kitchen?" "Yeah." The boy leaned closer. "Sometimes they spend too much money on bottled water." His finger moved across the sketch. "I thought maybe this could help." William stared at the drawing. Not because it was perfect, because it came from the mind of a child who spent his free time trying to solve problems for other people. Not make money, not become famous. Help people. The same motivation that had led him to speak up that morning. The same motivation that had saved William's life. Something shifted inside the billionaire. A realization, a painful one. For years, he had spent millions identifying talented people, recruiting executives, funding innovation, building teams. Yet extraordinary potential had been living quietly in the staff apartments behind his estate, and he had never noticed. Not once. A knock interrupted the moment. Everyone froze. Instantly, the room became silent. Another knock followed. Denise's face tightened. William stood. So did Malik. For one long second, nobody moved. Then William's phone vibrated. A text from Robert. "Security team." "That's us." The tension dissolved immediately. Denise exhaled. Malik laughed nervously. William opened the door. Two plainclothes security professionals stood outside. professional, calm, alert. Robert stepped from the stairwell behind them. "We're good," he said. Then his eyes landed on the notebook. "What are we looking at?" William handed it over. Robert flipped through several pages. His eyebrows slowly rose. "These are yours?" Malik nodded. The attorney looked genuinely impressed. "Kid, these are good." Malik smiled awkwardly. Compliments still made him uncomfortable, especially from adults, especially from people like Robert. The attorney handed the notebook back. Then his expression became serious. "We should go." The reminder brought reality back into the room. Daniel, Claire, the man outside the community kitchen. The danger hadn't disappeared, not even close. Denise gathered a small bag. Malik slipped the notebook into his backpack. Then they left together. As they walked down the hallway, William glanced back one last time at apartment 3B. The worn carpet, the chipped paint, the small door. For years, he had believed success was measured by what a person accumulated. Tonight, he had walked into a tiny apartment and discovered something far more valuable. Character. And the person with the strongest character he'd met all year happened to be a 12-year-old boy who had been invisible to almost everyone around him, including William Carter. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. The clouds were beginning to break apart. And for the first time since morning, William wasn't thinking about the company, or the money, or even Claire. He was thinking about Malik, and wondering how many other remarkable people spent their lives unseen simply because nobody important ever stopped to look. That thought stayed with William Carter long after midnight. He sat alone in a secure hotel suite Robert had arranged on the north side of Atlanta. The room was quiet. Outside, city lights stretched across the darkness. Inside, the silence felt different from the silence inside his mansion. His mansion had become a place filled with questions. This room held something else: clarity. For the first time in 22 years, he was away from Claire without explaining where he was. For the first time in nearly a year, someone else's carefully designed plan was no longer unfolding the way it should. And for the first time in a very long time, William wasn't reacting. He was preparing. The next morning arrived cold and gray. Low clouds drifted over Atlanta. A light fog hovered above the highways leading north. At 7:30 sharp, Robert entered the hotel suite carrying 2 folders and a tablet. William was already awake. He hadn't slept much. Neither of them mentioned it. "Any updates?" William asked. Robert sat down. "Several." That was never a good sign. The attorney opened the first folder. "Daniel Pierce." William immediately focused. Over the last 24 hours, that name had become impossible to ignore. What now? Robert slid several photographs across the table. More women. More cities. More timelines. Patterns. Always patterns. We found financial connections. William studied the pages. Some of the women had transferred large amounts of money before their deaths. Others had modified insurance policies. Several had changed wills. Each case had been ruled legal. Each case had appeared ordinary. Yet together they painted a disturbing picture. This wasn't luck. Robert nodded. "No." The attorney's voice remained calm. "This man doesn't chase opportunities. He creates them." William stared at one photograph. A smiling couple standing beside a sailboat. The woman had died less than a year later. Officially, nobody had been responsible. Yet now the image felt different. Darker. "What about Claire?" Robert paused, then opened the second folder. That answer worried William more, because Robert only paused when the truth was unpleasant. We've been monitoring communications. William looked up. And? Daniel called her twice yesterday. William wasn't surprised. The failed SUV plan would have forced communication. What did they discuss? We don't know. The answer frustrated both men. But we know something else. Robert leaned forward. Claire canceled a lunch meeting. So? She never cancels. William understood immediately. Claire Carter valued appearances, maintained schedules, protected routines. If she canceled something important, it meant she was distracted, concerned, possibly scared. Good. Fear changed people. Fear created mistakes. And right now they needed mistakes, because evidence was finally beginning to accumulate. The attorney closed the folder. Then he asked a question William already knew was coming. Are you sure you want to proceed? The room became quiet. This was the real question, the one that mattered. Because they had options now. Police involvement, formal investigations, protective measures, safer paths. But William kept thinking about the photographs, the women, the patterns, the years. If Daniel Pierce escaped again, another victim would eventually appear. Another story, another coincidence, another funeral. William slowly nodded. Yes. Robert studied him carefully. No second thoughts? William looked toward the window. Fog drifted between buildings. Atlanta looked distant, almost unreal. Then he thought about Malik standing beside the mansion hedge, a frightened 12-year-old child risking everything because it was right. No. No second thoughts. If a boy can do the brave thing, William said quietly, so can I. The attorney smiled faintly. For the first time in nearly 2 days. Then we moved forward. Across the city, meanwhile, Malik sat inside a private guest residence owned by one of William's companies. The place felt larger than any home he'd ever seen. Not enormous, but comfortable, safe. Denise stood in the kitchen preparing breakfast. The smell of eggs and toast drifted through the house. Normally, mornings felt rushed. Work schedules, school schedules, bills, stress. Today felt different, not easier, just quieter. Malik sat at the dining table drawing. His notebook remained open. A pencil moved across the page. Lines, shapes, measurements, ideas. The act helped him think, helped him stay calm. Denise watched him from the kitchen. For the first time in years, she didn't have to leave for work. William had insisted. Temporary leave, full pay, no arguments. The memory still felt surreal. A billionaire had spent more time talking to her son in 2 days than some teachers had in 2 years. The realization made her emotional every time she thought about it. Her phone rang. She answered immediately. It was William. Good morning. Morning. His voice sounded tired, but determined. How's Malik? Denise smiled slightly. Drawing. Good. A pause followed. Then William asked something unexpected. Has he always been like this? She laughed softly. Like what? The helping people part. The answer came instantly, always. William listened quietly. He used to bring home stray animals. Denise smiled at the memory. One time he tried to rescue 3 ducks from a drainage ditch. William laughed. The sound surprised both of them. Denise continued. He gets that from his father. The room became quiet. William had never asked about Malik's father. Now he realized he wanted to know. What happened to him? Denise looked toward her son. still drawing, still focused. He passed away when Malik was little. I'm sorry. She nodded. Thank you. Then she smiled again. But he would have been proud of him. William believed that. Absolutely. After the call ended, he sat quietly for several moments. Then Robert entered again, this time carrying a single sheet of paper. What is it? The attorney handed it over. William read. His expression changed immediately. Lake Hartwell. Robert nodded. The exact location mentioned in the recording. The route. The road. The supposed accident site. Everything connected. We confirmed surveillance activity there. William folded the paper slowly. The moment had arrived. The trap. The bait. The final test. Robert sat down across from him. We tell Claire the meeting has been rescheduled. William nodded. We used the same route, same departure time, same vehicle. The attorney finished the sentence. And we wait. The plan was simple, dangerously simple. Claire needed to believe the opportunity still existed. Daniel needed to believe the opportunity still existed. Only then would they move. Only then would investigators get what they needed. William stared at the route map, the reservoir, the winding road, the isolated stretch beside the water, a location chosen because it looked natural, believable, convincing. He imagined the original plan, the headlines, the sympathy, the funeral, the insurance claim, the company shares, everything flowing exactly where someone wanted it. Except one thing had changed. A boy had spoken up. One brave voice, that was all, and now an entire conspiracy was beginning to collapse because someone people rarely noticed had chosen courage over silence. The thought strengthened him. Later that afternoon, William returned home. For the first time since the recording. For the first time since everything changed. The mansion stood exactly as it always had. Perfect lawns, perfect hedges, perfect stone pathways. Yet now it felt different, like a stage after the audience has learned the secret. Claire greeted him at the front door. Warm smile, gentle eyes, concern carefully displayed. A performance. William finally understood that now. Thank goodness. She wrapped her arms around him. I've been worried. William returned the embrace. Just enough. Not too much. Not too little. Years of business negotiations suddenly felt useful. You look tired. I've had a long day. Did they figure out the problem with the driver? William nodded. We think it was a transportation scam. Relief flashed across her face. Tiny, almost invisible. But he saw it, the same way Malik had noticed the missing bracelet. Small details mattered. Always. Claire touched his arm. And your meeting? William looked directly into her eyes. The board rescheduled. Her heartbeat seemed to stop. Only for a second. When? Friday. The word hung between them. Friday. Lake Hartwell. One more opportunity. One more chance. Claire smiled. Carefully. Controlled. That's good. William nodded. Yes. Neither mentioned anything else. Neither revealed anything. The game had entered its final stage, and somewhere far away, Daniel Pierce received a message containing only 3 words. Friday is confirmed. He read it once, then smiled, because he believed the future was back on track. He believed the opportunity had returned. He believed he still controlled the board. What he didn't know was that the pieces had already moved. And on Friday morning, the road to Lake Hartwell would lead somewhere neither he nor Claire expected. Friday arrived cold and clear. The storm that had covered Atlanta earlier in the week was gone. A pale sunrise stretched across the horizon. The city slowly woke beneath soft morning light. At the Carter estate, everything appeared normal. That was the point. William descended the staircase at exactly 7:30. The same dark suit, the same briefcase, the same routine. He even paused in the kitchen to pour coffee into a travel mug. Every movement mattered. Every detail mattered. Because somewhere inside the house someone was watching. Claire stood beside the marble island. She smiled warmly. The smile looked perfect. It always had. Big day? William nodded. Unfortunately. She laughed softly. Lake Hartwell again? There it was. The confirmation. The destination she already knew. The destination she wasn't supposed to know. William kept his expression neutral. Afraid so. She stepped closer and adjusted his tie. A gesture she'd done hundreds of times over the years. Yet now it felt different. Like watching an old movie after learning the ending. Drive safely. William looked into her eyes. I always do. For a brief second, neither moved. Neither spoke. Then Claire kissed his cheek. A familiar gesture. A familiar goodbye. Perhaps the last one they would ever share. William turned and walked toward the front door. Outside, the morning air felt sharp, clean. The black sedan waited near the gate. This time the driver was George, the real George. His silver bracelet glinted in the sunlight. William noticed immediately. Small details, always the small details. George opened the rear door. You ready, sir? William nodded. As ready as I'll ever be. The sedan pulled away from the estate. From an upstairs window, Claire watched it disappear. Then she looked down at her phone. A message appeared. He's on the way. She stared at the screen for several seconds, then typed only 2 words. About time. Several miles away, Robert Hayes sat inside an unmarked SUV. A headset rested over one ear. Maps covered a tablet in his lap. Law enforcement vehicles were positioned throughout the route. Unmarked. Invisible. Patient. The operation had taken nearly 48 hours to coordinate. Federal investigators, state police, private security teams. Everyone waiting. Everyone watching. Because this wasn't about catching reckless criminals, it was about proving intent, about documenting actions, about ending the cycle before another victim appeared. Robert glanced toward a digital map. A blinking icon represented William's vehicle, moving steadily north, toward Lake Hartwell. Status? A voice crackled through his headset. All teams in position. Robert nodded. Maintain distance. The response came immediately. Copy. Meanwhile, William sat quietly in the back seat. The landscape gradually changed. Atlanta faded behind them. Suburbs became farmland. Farmland became rolling hills. Trees lined the highway. The world looked peaceful, beautiful even. George glanced into the rearview mirror. You okay, sir? William smiled faintly. No, the honesty surprised both of them. George nodded. Fair enough. Neither said much after that. There wasn't much left to say. An hour later, they exited the highway. The roads narrowed. Traffic thinned. The terrain became more rural. Lake Hartwell wasn't far now. William looked out the window. He remembered the recording, the road, the water, the accident, the future someone had imagined for him, a future that ended beside this lake. His phone vibrated. A message from Robert. 3 words. We're in place. William slipped the phone away. His pulse remained steady. Surprisingly steady. He wasn't afraid anymore. Angry. Disappointed. Heartbroken. Yes. But not afraid. Because somewhere in Atlanta, a 12-year-old boy had already shown him what courage looked like. Compared to that, sitting in a car felt easy. The road curved. The lake appeared, wide, gray-blue, stretching toward the horizon. The scenery was breathtaking, which made the reality beneath it even darker. George's voice broke the silence. Vehicle behind us. William looked into the side mirror. A dark SUV, several car lengths back, following. Not aggressively, not obviously, just there, waiting. His pulse quickened slightly. Same one? George nodded. Been behind us for about 15 minutes. William looked away, toward the water. The moment had arrived. Further ahead, another vehicle sat parked near a turnout. Its hood was raised. A man stood beside it, appearing stranded, appearing harmless. William recognized him immediately from Robert's photographs. Daniel Pierce. The man looked exactly the same. Confident, relaxed, patient. The kind of man who spent his life pretending to belong. George drove forward. Neither vehicle altered course. Everything looked normal. That was the frightening part. Then the world changed. A black SUV emerged from a side road. Another appeared behind Daniel's vehicle. Then a third. And a fourth. Everything happened within seconds. No sirens. No chaos. Just precision. The dark SUV following William suddenly attempted to turn. Too late. Two law enforcement vehicles boxed it in. The road closed. Every exit disappeared. Daniel's expression changed instantly. For the first time, William saw genuine surprise. The man stepped backward, then froze. Agents were already approaching. Calm, controlled, professional. No dramatic confrontation, no shouting, just certainty. The certainty of people who knew the game was over. George slowly pulled onto the shoulder. William watched through the window. Daniel looked around once, twice, searching for options. There were none. The trap had closed, and for the first time in years, someone else controlled the board. William's phone rang. Robert, it's done. William kept watching. Daniel was speaking with investigators now, his confidence fading, his posture changing. The transformation was remarkable. Predators always seemed larger from a distance, smaller once cornered. What about the others? William asked. Robert's answer came immediately. Already in custody. William closed his eyes briefly. Not from relief, from exhaustion. The kind that follows a long storm. A pause followed. Then Robert spoke again. There's one more thing. William opened his eyes. What? Claire. The name landed heavily. Even now. Even after everything. What about her? Robert's voice softened. Detectives are at the house. William looked toward the lake. The water moved gently beneath the morning sun. Calm, peaceful, as though nothing extraordinary had happened. What did she say? Silence. Then Robert answered. She asked one question. William waited. Did Daniel lie to me too? The billionaire stared across the water. For a long moment, he didn't respond. Because suddenly he understood something. Claire had been greedy, selfish, weak. But Daniel had been something else. A professional manipulator. A man who built entire lives from deception. A man who found cracks in people and widened them. The realization didn't excuse her choices. Nothing could. But it made the tragedy larger. Sadder. More human. William slowly exhaled. The lake shimmered beneath the sunlight. The road was quiet now. The danger had passed. The operation had succeeded. Yet somehow victory didn't feel triumphant. It felt heavy. Because the greatest losses in life rarely arrive through violence. They arrive through broken trust. And 22 years of trust had just reached their end beside a quiet lake in Georgia. As George turned the sedan around, William looked out one final time. Then he thought about Malik. The boy who had stood beside a hedge. The boy nobody noticed. The boy who changed everything. And for the first time all week, William smiled. Because one brave child had done what an army of lawyers, executives, and security systems never could. He had seen the truth before anyone else. And because of that, everyone was still alive to face tomorrow. The drive back to Atlanta felt longer than the drive out. The danger was over. The trap had closed. Daniel Pierce was in custody. His associates had been detained. Investigators finally had evidence connecting years of deception into a single pattern. Everything that should have felt like victory had happened. Yet William Carter sat quietly in the back seat, staring out the window. The passing trees blurred together. The sunlight reflected across fields and roadside fences. The world looked calm. His thoughts were not. George understood. After years of driving executives, politicians, and wealthy clients, he had learned when silence was needed. This was one of those moments. No questions, no conversation, just miles of road and space to think. William found himself remembering small things. Claire laughing during a vacation in Charleston. Claire crying at his mother's funeral. Claire holding his hand in a hospital waiting room years ago when doctors thought he might need surgery. 22 years. Thousands of ordinary moments. Now every memory felt uncertain. Not false. Just complicated. Because people were rarely one thing. The same person capable of kindness could also make terrible choices. The same person capable of love could become lost. And somehow that truth hurt more than anger ever could. His phone vibrated. "Robert," William answered immediately. "Any updates?" The attorney sounded exhausted. "A few." William waited. "Daniel is talking." That surprised him. "Already? Why?" Robert gave a humorless laugh. "Because people like him always think they're smarter than everyone else." William looked out the window. That sounded accurate. "They found financial records." Robert continued. "Several aliases, hidden accounts, false identities. The list kept growing." "And Claire?" Silence followed, long enough for William to notice. "Robert, I'm here." "What about Claire?" The attorney took a breath. "She cooperated." William closed his eyes. Somehow that answer hurt more than resistance would have. "What did she say?" Robert's voice softened. "She admitted everything." The landscape outside seemed to fade. William listened. Not moving, not speaking. "She said Daniel convinced her you didn't love her anymore." The billionaire stared ahead. "He told her she was trapped. He told her you cared more about the company than the marriage." William said nothing, because there was some truth there. Not enough to justify anything, but enough to hurt. Robert continued. "She admitted the insurance changes, the meetings, the lies." Another pause. Then came the part that stayed with William. "She also said she never believed it would go this far." William almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was tragic. People always believed they could control dangerous situations, until the danger became real, until consequences arrived, until someone got hurt. The line disconnected shortly afterward. William remained silent for the rest of the drive. Late that afternoon, the sedan entered the Carter estate. The gates opened slowly. The familiar driveway stretched ahead. The mansion looked exactly the same. Perfect, elegant, impressive, and completely different. Detective Sarah Bennett was waiting near the front steps. She was in her mid-50s with sharp eyes and the calm confidence of someone who had spent decades seeing people at their best and worst. William stepped from the car. The detective approached. "Mr. Carter." "Detective." She nodded respectfully. "Thank you for coming." William glanced toward the house. "Is she still here?" The detective followed his gaze. "No." The answer landed softly, yet heavily. "She left an hour ago." William nodded. Part of him had expected that. Another part hadn't. "What happened?" The detective looked toward the mansion. "Honestly, yes." Sarah Bennett sighed. "It wasn't what I expected." William waited. When we arrived, she was sitting in the garden room. The detective spoke carefully, as if she was waiting. The image formed immediately in William's mind. Claire sitting beside the windows. The same room where they had spent evenings together. The same room overlooking the gardens. The same room where she had probably imagined an entirely different future. "What did she do?" Sarah folded her arms. "Nothing." William frowned. "Nothing?" No argument. No attempt to leave. No denial. The detective paused, then repeated the sentence Robert had mentioned earlier. She just kept saying one thing. William already knew, yet hearing it aloud felt different. "What?" Sarah looked directly at him. "He told me he'd done this before." Silence followed. Wind moved gently through nearby trees. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the lawn. She said it twice. The detective continued, as if she couldn't stop thinking about it. William lowered his eyes. The tragedy had become clearer now. Claire wasn't innocent. Not remotely. She had made choices, terrible choices. But she had also believed lies, and people who built their lives on lies eventually destroyed everyone around them, including themselves. Sarah glanced toward the house. "There's something else." William looked up. "What?" The detective handed him a small envelope. "She left this." His heart tightened. The handwriting was unmistakable. Claire's. For several seconds, he simply stared at it, then slowly opened it. Inside was a single page. Nothing dramatic. No excuses. No lengthy explanations. Just a letter. William read silently. The words were simple. She apologized. Not for being caught. For becoming someone she no longer recognized. She wrote about loneliness. About resentment. About mistakes. About believing promises she should never have believed. And near the bottom, one sentence stood apart from the rest. "I stopped being grateful for what I had and started chasing what I thought I deserved." William read the line twice, then folded the letter carefully. The detective waited. "What will you do with it?" William looked toward the gardens, toward the life that no longer existed, then back at the letter. "Keep it." Sarah nodded. The answer seemed right. Not forgiveness, not rejection, just acceptance. The truth didn't disappear because people wished it away. Several hours later, after investigators left and the property finally grew quiet, William walked alone through the mansion. Room after room, hallways, offices, dining rooms, spaces filled with expensive furniture and expensive memories. The house felt enormous, and strangely empty. Eventually, he reached the garden room. The sun was setting. Golden light filled the space. For a long time, he simply stood there, thinking, remembering, letting the silence settle. Then his phone rang. Malik. William answered immediately. Hey. The boy sounded nervous. Hi, Mr. Carter. William smiled. The simple greeting felt surprisingly comforting. Everything okay? Yeah. A pause. Then, my mom said I should call. William sat down near the window. Why? Another pause. Longer this time. Because we wanted to make sure you're okay. For a moment, William couldn't speak. The words landed directly in the center of everything. After everything. After the fear. After the danger. After the betrayal. The person checking on him wasn't a board member, not a business partner, not an executive. It was a 12-year-old boy. A boy who owed him nothing. A boy who had already done more than enough. Yet he still cared. William looked out toward the fading sunlight and suddenly understood something. The story had never really been about wealth or insurance or conspiracies. It had always been about character, about who people became when nobody was watching. And among everyone involved, the strongest character belonged to the person with the least power. I'm okay, Malik. The boy sounded relieved. Good. William smiled. For real this time. A genuine smile. The first one in days. Thank you. For what? William looked around the quiet room, the empty house, the broken future, the second chance, everything. For seeing something everyone else missed. Silence followed. Then Malik gave the simplest answer imaginable. That's what people are supposed to do. The call ended a few minutes later. William remained sitting beside the window, watching the sun disappear, thinking about courage, thinking about choices, thinking about second chances. And for the first time since that morning beside the hedge, he finally felt something that had been missing. Peace. Not complete peace. Not yet. But enough to believe tomorrow might still become something good. 6 months later, spring arrived in Atlanta. The city looked different beneath the warm sunlight. Trees that had stood bare through winter were covered in green again. Sidewalk cafes filled with people. Community gardens bloomed. Children played basketball in neighborhood parks long after dinner. Life had continued, as it always did. But for several people, life had become something entirely new. On a bright Saturday morning, William Carter stood near the entrance of the Grant Street Community Kitchen. The old brick building looked much the same as it always had. The faded sign still hung above the doorway. The paint still chipped in places. The smell of fresh soup still drifted through the neighborhood. Yet something important had changed. A crowd had gathered outside. Families, teachers, volunteers, reporters, community leaders, children from local schools. They weren't there for a celebrity. They weren't there for a politician. They had come for a boy. Inside the building, Denise Johnson stood near one of the long serving tables. For the first time in years, she wasn't worrying about overdue bills. She wasn't working 3 jobs. She wasn't calculating how far the next paycheck needed to stretch. The change still felt unreal. Not because somebody had rescued her, because somebody had finally noticed her son. Across the room, Malik sat nervously in a folding chair. He had grown slightly taller. His confidence had grown too. But moments like this still made him uncomfortable. Being seen was something he wasn't used to. For most of his life, people had looked through him, past him, around him, never really at him. That morning was different. A banner stretched across the far wall. One Brave Voice Scholarship Fund. The words felt too large, too important, too permanent. Malik kept staring at them as if they belonged to somebody else. William noticed. The billionaire smiled, then walked over and sat beside him. "You look nervous." Malik laughed softly. "A little." "A little? Okay. A lot." William nodded. "That's normal." The boy looked around the room. "Do all these people really have to be here?" William laughed. "Unfortunately." Malik groaned. The reaction made William smile even more. For 6 months, moments like this had become some of the brightest parts of his life. The company continued. The business continued. Meetings continued. But his priorities had changed. Somewhere along the way, he had stopped measuring success only by profits and acquisitions. Instead, he started paying attention to people. Really paying attention. And it had begun with a frightened boy standing beside a hedge. The room gradually filled. Conversations echoed off the walls. Children ran between tables. Volunteers arranged refreshments. Then Denise approached. She looked elegant in a simple blue dress. Not expensive, just confident. The kind of confidence that comes from finally being able to breathe. "You ready?" she asked Malik. The boy shook his head immediately. "No." Denise laughed. "Good answer." William stood. "It doesn't matter." Both of them looked at him. "You don't have to be ready." "Why not?" William smiled. "Because today isn't about being perfect. It's about being yourself." The words settled quietly. A few minutes later, the event began. People took their seats. The room grew still. A local school principal welcomed everyone. Then community leaders spoke briefly. Several volunteers shared stories. One elderly woman described how Malik had spent months carrying groceries for her after a surgery. A teacher talked about helping younger students. A bus driver described finding him in the rain, helping a homeless veteran move boxes beneath an awning. Story after story followed. Small acts, ordinary kindness, things Malik barely remembered doing, because he never considered them important. Yet hearing them together created a different picture, a larger picture, the portrait of a young man whose character had quietly shaped the lives around him. Denise wiped tears from her eyes, several times. She wasn't the only one. Finally, William approached the podium. The room applauded, then grew quiet. For a moment, he simply looked at the audience, then at Malik, then at the community kitchen, the place where so much had started. 6 months earlier, William Carter would have delivered a polished corporate speech. Today, he spoke from the heart. Most people think courage looks dramatic. The room listened. They imagined sirens, headlines, big moments. He shook his head. But real courage is usually much smaller. His gaze found Malik. It often looks like a scared kid deciding to speak up. The room became silent. Many people knew the story now. Not every detail, but enough. Enough to understand. William continued. 6 months ago, somebody had a chance to stay quiet. He could have looked the other way. He could have convinced himself it wasn't his problem. Instead, he chose something harder. William paused. He chose to care. The audience remained completely still. He cared about another human being he barely knew. And because of that choice, my life changed. The billionaire looked toward Malik, then smiled. No. He corrected himself. Many lives changed. Applause filled the room. Malik immediately looked down, embarrassed. Denise squeezed his shoulder. William waited for the applause to settle. then continued. That's why we're creating the One Brave Voice Scholarship Fund. More applause. The program would support talented students from underserved communities, students with potential, students with ideas, students who simply needed somebody to notice. The audience loved it. But William wasn't finished. Not yet. He reached beneath the podium and lifted something, a large framed drawing. People leaned forward, curious. William turned it toward the audience. Gasps spread through the room. The drawing showed a compact water filtration system, simple, affordable, practical. Malik immediately recognized it. His eyes widened. Wait, William smiled. You remember this? The boy nodded. It was just an idea. William shook his head. No. Then he pointed toward several engineers sitting near the front. They disagreed. Malik stared. The engineers smiled back. For months, William's company had quietly studied the design, refined it, tested it, improved it, without changing the original concept. The room waited. William looked at the audience, then delivered the final surprise. Starting next month, our company will manufacture these systems and donate them to community kitchens and shelters throughout Georgia. The room exploded with applause. Some people stood. Others cheered. Several volunteers openly cried. Malik sat frozen, certain he had misheard. William stepped away from the podium and walked directly toward him. You thought nobody would ever care about your notebook? The boy nodded slowly. William smiled. They were wrong. The applause continued. Longer, louder, warmer. For perhaps the first time in his life, Malik didn't feel invisible. People saw him, not because he was famous, not because he was wealthy, not because he wanted attention, because kindness had finally been recognized. When the event ended, people gathered throughout the building. Children asked for photographs. Teachers congratulated him. Volunteers hugged Denise. The entire room felt lighter somehow, hopeful. Outside, the spring sun bathed Grant Street in gold. Later that afternoon, after most people had left, William and Malik sat together on a low brick wall behind the community kitchen. The neighborhood was quiet. Birds moved through nearby trees. A train horn echoed in the distance. For a while, neither spoke. Then Malik finally broke the silence. Mr. Carter? Yeah? Do you ever think about that day? William smiled. Every day. But he answered differently. Sometimes. Malik nodded. So do I. The billionaire looked toward him. What do you think about? The boy considered the question, then answered honestly. I think about how close everything came. William nodded. He understood. Then Malik smiled slightly. But mostly I think about something else. What? The boy looked across the neighborhood, at the community kitchen, at the people walking home, at his mother laughing with volunteers near the entrance, and finally at William. I think about how one decision changed everything. The billionaire sat quietly, then nodded. Me too. They remained there for a while, watching the afternoon sunlight drift across the city. Neither needed to say much more. Some stories ended with money, others ended with revenge. This one ended differently. A boy who had once been ignored was now seen. A mother who had struggled alone could finally rest. A billionaire who thought success meant building companies had learned that true wealth meant building people. And somewhere in the distance, life continued. Ordinary, beautiful, unpredictable, exactly as it should. Because sometimes the most powerful voice in the world isn't the loudest. Sometimes it's the quiet voice that chooses to speak when everyone else stays silent. And sometimes, That voice belongs to a boy standing beside a hedge, a boy who simply refused to look away. If this story touched your heart, leave a comment below and share what courage means to you. And here's something simple. If you believe one act of kindness can change a life, type 1 in the comments. If you believe good people still exist in this world, type 0. I read as many comments as I can, and I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if stories like this must remind you that hope, courage, and kindness still matter, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next story might be even more powerful than this one. Until next time, take care of yourself, take care of the people around you, and never underestimate how much difference one brave voice can make. We'll see you in the next story.